Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would talk with you guys a little bit about one of the biggest pieces of pseudoscientific drivel related to intermittent fasting. Now, I want to state up front, I think intermittent fasting has its place in the toolbox. I think it can be a valuable body composition and weight management tool. I think that there are still unproven but potential health benefits of intermittent fasting that we need to study further with long-term studies and in laboratory conditions. But I remain optimistic about those. But I won't say, hey, that they are absolutely true, these things are proven, because they aren't. They're not. And anyone who tells you they are, kind of yanking your leg a little bit. They have the possibility of it, and there's enough possibility that they're promising enough that we really should invest more resources into studying it, because they have potential, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. That means it might be worth us experimenting with as individuals while we're waiting on the science to be conclusive. Now, that being said, one of the biggest things that is annoying that these people always talk about is, you know, when you're in your fasted window, when you're doing intermittent fasting, your growth hormone levels are elevated. And they spin this as some sort of magical selling point, as if there are actual benefits to this. And I'm going to cover the twofold nature of this problem here, is that has to do with your body balancing itself. So one I'm going to cover later, but the first one's going to be, you do realize there's no body composition benefits to this. And what I mean is, okay, so a period of time in every day where you're fasted, your growth hormone levels are elevated to some extent. Not massively, but a small amount. They're elevated. They're up because circulating insulin's lower, circulating glucose is lower, all this stuff. We know these things can slightly impede growth hormone release in the body. Well, here's my question for you. Do you actually think that this is going to help you build muscle? Because it won't. It won't. There might be the argument of some slight additional fat burning from this. Maybe. But you know what? That's never been conclusive, because when things are measured on a calorie for calorie basis, we find that intermittent fasting doesn't produce superior fat loss to other forms of dieting when calories, macros, particularly protein, are all controlled and equal. It doesn't seem to be superior at all. What it is it's a valuable appetite and caloric control tool. And it is valuable for that. It can be useful for that. And I think everyone who's experimented with it and worked with clients with it, and dietitians who've worked with it, agree that for some people, not everyone, but for a lot of people actually, it can be a very valuable caloric intake management tool. Now, what people need to grasp are like, well, what do you mean? If growth hormone levels are elevated, why wouldn't that be anabolic? Because your muscle protein synthesis is down. Meaning, the whole purpose of the reason anyone would try to elevate growth hormone is for additional muscle protein synthesis, in theory. Well, you're not supplying any new amino acids. You're not supplying any new protein to your body during this window. You're not experiencing any caloric intake or amino acids in your bloodstream ready for you to build muscle tissue with, and that's the problem. You know, we're kind of falling back to this whole concept that people have of, oh, calories don't matter, only hormones do. You know what? That's complete nonsense. Only morons preach that sort of thing. It's not based on reality. It's not true. That hormone response in your body when it's in the normal range. We're not talking about people who are injecting all sorts of hormones into their body, okay? That's a different animal. We're talking about hormones that your body can produce on its own. The idea, sorry, my dog is being a little hyper. The idea that you can significantly impact muscle growth through hormone manipulation in the normal range is absurd, and the science shows that it's not actually true. So that being said, this whole concept that, oh, you've got elevated growth hormone, so it must be a more anabolic state, or even muscle preserving state, without the presence of additional glucose or insulin to shuttle that glucose into your muscle tissue. By the way, insulin is very anabolic to muscle tissue, more so than it is to fat tissue. A little tidbit people seem to forget. So there is no protein sparing benefit to elevated growth hormone levels without the presence of additional amino acids in the bloodstream. Right? It's not going to preserve muscle tissue at all. There's nothing else for it to redirect as a fuel source when your body needs to go through like gluconeogenesis. All right, so it's not muscle preserving and it's not muscle building. You're in a calorie deprived state during your fasted window. That growth hormone isn't helping you in that regard in any way. It's not helping you build muscle. It's not helping you preserve muscle any further. Furthermore, growth hormone itself, even when you take it outside the normal range, keep in mind this is the normal range. There are no noted health benefits, or particularly not necessarily health, but anabolic benefits to growth hormone inside the normal range fluctuations. None at all, and that has been studied. Zero. Furthermore, exogenous amounts, if your testosterone levels are in the normal range, exogenous amounts of growth hormone don't seem to be anabolic either. People say, what? When I'm talking mega doses, I'm talking $1,000 a month or more worth of pharmaceutical growth hormone have been penned in people. People who train in studies, they didn't gain any more muscle than the control group if they had normal androgen levels. In other words, if they weren't supplementing any additional testosterone or anabolics with the growth hormone, it didn't produce any additional muscle growth, even $1,000 plus a month being used in people. So let that sink in. Growth hormones is minimally, it's anabolic ability inside the normal hormone range for people who aren't in the super physiological range of their androgens. Growth hormone isn't anabolic at all, even when large amounts are used, and that's what studies seem to show. It creates a synergy with the other anabolics, and that's when it actually really, really works, when it's combined with those things. By itself, it doesn't. So in what world would anyone think that elevated growth hormone levels in the normal range, when there are people out there pinning 10 times that amount every day? Right? There are bodybuilders and football players who use 10 times what you produce. They're injecting that on a daily basis. All right. So your little minor fluctuations during a fasted window are completely meaningless. Now, the big kicker here is where it gets interesting. People forget there's a homeostasis there. They're like, well, growth hormone's elevated, circulating insulin is lower, so you're in a fat burning window. Well, yeah, but you have a fat gaining window later, because all these things swing around in balance. Now, if you're going to consume the same amount of food, right? If you're going to consume whatever, 3,000 calories, your 400 grams of carbs, your 150 grams of protein, whatever it is you're going to consume, you do realize your body's going to swing back the other direction when you eat all that. And when you choose to eat all of that in your 4-hour or 6-hour feed window, you're going to get all the glucose, all the insulin, all the other stuff, all the fatty acids from the fat are still going to hit your bloodstream. They're just going to hit more at once. So your circulating insulin and your glucose and everything, you're going to get your full day's worth in that little window instead of spread out over 12 or 14 hours or whatever your normal feed window would have been without fasting. You're still going to get all of it. So you might have been in a fat burning mode earlier then, but then you're going to go into a fat gaining mode later. It will balance out. It's still going to be equalized based upon your calories and protein and carb and fat intake. It's still going to be the same. And that's what all the studies have shown. Intermittent fasting doesn't give you any advantage in fat loss when compared to equal calories and macronutrients spread out through the day. There's no advantage. It helps you control those things better for some people because they'll eat less. But you're going to rebalance that stuff out. Now, what happens to your growth hormone levels when you have this other event? You created a fasted window so that your body produced a little more during that window. What happens during the big feed when all your circulating insulin and glucose and everything goes up? The growth hormone is going to drop lower than your normal levels. And what you're going to find, and again, the data usually confirms this, you're going to end up balancing out for the day. You're still going to produce the same net amount of growth hormone. You're going to produce the same net amount of insulin. All of that throughout the day over the 24-hour cycle based upon your food and all this other intake. It's going to balance out the same for the day whether you chose to use intermittent fasting or not. It's just that your growth hormone is going to drop lower during your fed window than it would be normally when you're eating your food more spaced out. And your insulin is going to be higher during that window, but it is all going to equal out in the end. Your body's going to find the balance in homeostasis. So this whole idea of these fluctuating hormones having the benefits and body recomposition benefits that people think they do, that just isn't how the body actually works. That's all bro science. That's all pseudoscience. It's not based on reality. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.